Hello and welcome to Here's to Your Health. I'm your host, Veggie Patty, and it is my privilege to bring you information on healthy living. In today's episode, we have some very special guests. I'm honored to have them on the show. We have 3 breast cancer survivors that are going to be talking to you today about their own personal stories of hope. I'd like to introduce you to my mother, Sophie Redkovich.
Hi.
Debbie Celia.
Hi.
And Amy Hodges.
Hi.
So welcome to the show, ladies. And I'm going to have each of them talk to you individually and share their stories. So I'd like to give them the floor. And I'd like to start with Sophie. Sophie is a 13-year breast cancer survivor. She was diagnosed at age 52. So Sophie, why don't you tell the viewers a little bit about your story?
Okay, well, I think the story starts really when my own mother was diagnosed with breast cancer, and from that time on I was monitored. I think I was in my mid-30s. Then my mother was fine, and then years later she had metastatic breast cancer. And by that time, I was getting mammograms every year and a half. And so 3 weeks after my mother passed away, they discovered that I had breast cancer also. An excisional biopsy didn't work, so I was scheduled to have a mastectomy, but I healed fast enough so that they were able to do a re-excision, and which gave me good margins, and then I had chemo and radiation, and I've been fine ever since. I think to me the most important thing about breast cancer treatment was, one, find the place and the doctors that you have the most confidence in and that you feel that you're going to get the best care from it, which is what I did. I went to several different places, 2 different places, and I picked the one that I thought was the best for me. And of course, my family helped me make that decision. The other thing that I think really helped me a lot with the most with my treatment was all the support that I got from my family, from my friends, from my coworkers, because I worked during the entire time that I was having treatment. And I think that is what gave me the most hope and the best. I feel I got the best outcome because of it. Plus, I joined a support group at the Josephine Ford Cancer Center on Allen Road, and that helped me a great deal, because there are side effects that you get from having chemo treatment and radiation, and they're sometimes scary. You know, you're eating and all of a sudden you're not swallowing right, and it found out that it was from the radiation. There were other little things like neuropathy in your arms and things, and by going to the support group, you hear other people's stories, and you hear other people are supporting each other. So as I was going, I went for about 3 years, so every month, and so as you get better and new people are coming into the support group, then you're able to help them too. So I really felt that was really important. Plus, I felt that I got better so quickly after my excisional biopsy, because I went to I was encouraged to go to a nutritional specialist, a doctor in Ann Arbor, and by going like on to juicing and extra supplements, I really felt that that's what helped me heal much quicker, so that in the end I didn't have to have that mastectomy, even though it was scheduled and everything. I was able to do a re-excisional a lumpectomy, and I was able to. I didn't have to have any more surgery. The only thing is, 2 years after my surgery and radiation, I developed I had a freckle on the side of where I had my surgery that developed into a melanoma, and it was a very one of those fast, I guess, aggressive melanoma. So that was discovered. Thank goodness that was discovered quickly, and I was able to have surgery without any further chemotherapy or anything else. And I've been good ever since. And I always like to, I feel like it's my responsibility to help others who are maybe going through the same thing, you know, just talking to other people and who are, you know, it's scary when this happens. So I like the opportunity to, you know, if I can, to help others who are in that same situation that I was in.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that. I know that one thing I wanted you to talk a little bit more about is when you were going through your treatment, like you were told specific foods, like you had to stay out of, like grocery stores and things.
My oncologist, he really believed in fresh fruits and vegetables and organic, but he didn't want me in any produce markets or anything because he said the pesticides in there they're in the air. And he says your immune system is weakened. And so my one daughter is a dietitian, and so introduced me to more whole foods and low-fat diet. I was part of a study, and I forgot what the study was called, I think the STAR study or something, that tracked women who were eating low fat, more vegetables, more fruits. I had to take the skin off of fruits. So it was a better nutrition, more healthy diet. And for a while I was doing juicing, and that was part of my treatment.
Great.
Plus also meditation and yoga, believe it or not. I had my friends all went with me to go to yoga class, because anything that would be helpful for my state of mind.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your story and for being here. I would like to have Debbie share her story with us now. Debbie is a 4-year survivor, and you were diagnosed at age 49,
Yes.
Correct? So, and your story was a little bit different about how you found the cancer. So can you share your story, please?
Yes, I had my mammograms. I'd done my mammograms every year. I went for them, and on this time, about a year after that first mammogram, I noticed a dimple on my breast, and for about 3 months, I totally ignored it. And one day, and I always did my circulars like we're taught when we're young girls. You check every month on your circular exams, and this time I grabbed it and I pinched it, and it felt like a gumball inside there. And so I went for another mammogram and then an ultrasound, and then they said, you need a biopsy. Well, the biopsy, he looked at it and said, oh, no, we're going to cut this out. Okay. In my mind, I was thinking I had a blocked milk duct. So breast cancer is not in my family, so I didn't even have a concern for that. After they went in and took it out, I went back a week later to get the stitches out, and he said, well, you have dirty margins. And I said, what do you mean I have dirty margins? He said, well, you have breast cancer, honey. And I said, what do you mean I have breast cancer? So in all, it took 3 surgeries to remove the cancer and to save my breast, which was the ultimate goal for me. The main message I really want to get across is that I had a dimple. I never looked up to God and said, why did you do this to me? Because I'm no different than any other woman who gets breast cancer. But for me it was, give me a reason that I need to go through this. So my husband and I have a restaurant here in Wyandotte, Gregorio's Italian Restaurant, and through my business I chose not to wear a wig, and I wore a little baseball cap, and it was an open forum for me to speak to customers and, you know, share my story about my dimple. And in the thousands of women that I've shared my story with, only a handful of them knew that a dimple was a sign of breast cancer. After the doctor had told me that I had breast cancer, I went home and I went to our favorite friend who knows everything, and that's Google. And I did symptoms of breast cancer, and there it was. A dimple, which we're aware of, a discharge, which there's a problem if you see a discharge, and a dimple. Or I'm sorry, it was a lump. A lump, a discharge, and a dimple. And I went, why are we not taught to look for a dimple? So that was my reason, was to be an educator for other women, to give them the knowledge that, you know, this is, it's not cellulite, and that's what I thought I had, was cellulite. This is serious, and it is cancer.
Right. So we were talking a little bit about before the show, and you two had mentioned support was something that really helped to get you through this, but you were also talking about positivity. Can you expand on that and tell the viewers a little bit about what positivity did for you?
Staying positive. My husband and I and my children said no negativity around us. We're going to stay positive, and for me, in my mind, that was what really helped me get through it. I had to embrace the cancer because this is who I am now. This is a part of me. You have to accept it and embrace it and move forward with it. I'm one of the very lucky ones. I'm still alive. And my husband and my daughters and my friends and my sister-in-law, everybody just came together for me. And, you know, my husband wouldn't let me lay in bed or lay on the sofa and, you know, just kick back and take my Vicodin and sleep. And he's like, come on, hon, you have to go downstairs. You have to move. So he kept me moving. And I think if I would have laid there, all you do is think about it. And, you know, the shower becomes your crying place because you have to be strong for your kids and for your husband. And in the shower is where I would just, you know, have my breakdowns, and, you know, I'm fine.
Great.
And the other senses.
Great. Now, is there, if you could give one more piece of advice to either people who are fighting or for their family members, what would that be?
Just to reach out to them, to show them the support, and to not be afraid to come to them and say, I had a cousin who was afraid, he didn't know what to say to me. He never called. A year later. And it's like, why? And he said, I just didn't know what to say to you. I didn't know. He was so hurt by the fact that I had cancer and I could die, and he didn't want to accept that, and he didn't know how to say, I'm sorry, or what can I do for you? It was just his way of dealing with it, I guess. But for me, it was like, just come to us. I've been walking in supermarkets, and I had women come up to me and say, are you a breast cancer survivor? And I'd be like, yeah, I am. And they're like, I'm a 10-year survivor, or I'm a 5-year survivor. And it's just like, for me, when I hear somebody that has those years on them, it's like, oh, it gives me hope, more hope. So just approach them. It's part of their healing too, I think.
It is.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. Now, before I introduce Amy, you guys had actually, unbeknownst to me, you guys had known each other via phone beforehand. Can you talk a little bit about how that occurred?
Well, Amy, her friends came into my restaurant looking for a donation for a fundraiser that they were having for her. And I shared with them that I am a survivor. Please give her my card, and if she wants to talk to me, I'm more than happy to listen. Took her about 2 weeks, but she called and we talked for about an hour and a half. And I know when it was me, I had, who do you talk to? I never knew anybody that went through it. And I had a cousin in Arizona that was his wife was a survivor. I never even met her, and I called her and talked to her, and she helped me through it. So I said, if I can help another woman just by listening, somebody that understands what you're going through, I think it helps tremendously.
Great. Yeah, and I'm glad, and this is the first time that you guys have
actually
met in person. And
We're Facebook friends.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's great, and I'm glad that we can facilitate that here. Thank you so much again for sharing.
Well, thank you.
And I wanted to introduce Amy. This is Amy Hodges, and you had a different type of breast cancer, triple negative cancer, which I'll ask you to explain. And you were diagnosed when you were 38 years old.
Yes.
So can you explain to the viewers what is the triple negative cancer?
From my understanding of doing my own research, triple negative breast cancer is, it doesn't carry the receptors that normal breast cancer carries. They look for certain hormones in breast cancer, and when they did a biopsy on mine, I didn't carry any of those. So it all came back to a negative. Which means pretty much after I've finished my treatment, there isn't the pill that I can take for 5 or 10 years because it doesn't help my type of breast cancer.
Okay. So now you've just finished your treatment, correct?
Yes, I finished my treatment July 5th, 2013, so that was
Okay.
my Independence Day, finishing
Right.
the treatment.
Great. Congratulations. So
Thank you.
what are some things that really helped you to get through the diagnosis and the treatment?
I'd have to say my kids. Being 38 years old, not even being old enough to have the mammogram yet, thinking to myself, I have 3 kids. I have a son who's deployed in the military. I was concentrating a lot on that. I have a 17-year-old daughter who's in high school, and I have a 4-year-old baby at home. And I just looked at them and said to myself, they're my reasons for getting up and fighting every day. I did everything I possibly could to not let the treatment take over me. Even if I didn't want to get out of bed, I still got out of bed. If I didn't want to get dressed or take a shower that day, I still got out of bed and took a shower that day. I used all that as the support for them as well, so they weren't so worried of mom being sick. You know, they 17 and 20, yeah, they're kind of older. I'm still their mommy, you know, and it still would affect them. And having a 4-year-old and losing my hair and going through treatment, and mommy's got to go to the doctors, and the good old port that's in my chest that you have to be careful of. Mommy's got a port. To educate them and get them involved in my treatment, that's what got me through it. I used stories. I couldn't have asked for our chance of meeting and getting to know someone. She's the first person that I spoke with that I actually opened up to and was able to talk to about it. You could talk to anyone you wanted to that wasn't going through it, but they just didn't understand you. They didn't know what it was like physically, mentally, emotionally, and I think that helped out a lot, was reaching out. And like she said, it took me 2 weeks, but I said one day, I need this. I need to reach out, and that's another thing I'd like people to understand is you can't do it alone. You definitely need a support system, and friends and family are wonderful support system, but I think strangers and someone that shares your experience is probably the best support that you can get because they understand where you're coming from.
That's great, thank you. Now, can you tell us, since you didn't have like any of the family history or hormones for this, how was this even diagnosed? How did you even discover it?
Actually, my husband found the lump. He discovered it, and he said, "Whoa, what is this?" I felt it, and I said, "Well, I'm not quite sure." It was on a Sunday, so Monday morning I made a doctor's appointment. She did a manual exam, and she said, "We're going to get you in for a mammogram." So I went for a mammogram on Wednesday. When I had the mammogram done, they also did an ultrasound, and then the radiologist looked at it, and he said, "Yeah, we're going to go ahead and take this out." So on Friday, I was scheduled for a lumpectomy, so it was really fast. After the surgery, it took a while for them to come back with the diagnosis of triple negative. They had to do the biopsy on it. Once that came back with the outcome of triple negative, they wanted to go in and check for the lymph nodes to see if it had spread to the lymph nodes, which it had. So I went ahead and had that done, and then I started my treatment of 16 rounds of chemo and 33 treatments of radiation. And so far, so good. I'm feeling good. I do have the neuropathy. There are side effects from the treatments. I mean, they say chemotherapy is probably the one nastiest thing you can put in your body that doesn't take you. It is a nasty drug, but it seems to do its job of what it's set out to do, so I'm grateful for that. Not so much the side effects, but for the treatment.
Right. And if there's any additional message that you'd like to get across to the viewers?
It doesn't matter whether cancer is in your family or not in your family. I do believe that you should constantly check and feel your breasts. Anything that's unfamiliar from yesterday to today is definitely something to look into. I'm encouraging people, especially younger than 40, to push to have mammograms done. A lot of people in the medical field would like to knock it off as it's just a cyst. It's nothing to worry about. Well, they all thought it was a cyst for me too, and it turned out to be, again, triple negative breast cancer, and it's a very aggressive breast cancer, and at 38 years old or younger or older, it's very scary to have to go through something like that. So it's being aware and knowing your body, I think.
Right. Well, thank you so much for being here and for
you.
sharing your story. I wanted to thank everybody for being here today, and it really sounds like, messages of positivity and support and hope is really what a lot of people need to get through. I do have a letter that I would like to read. This letter comes from a 30-year breast cancer survivor. And she says, 29 years ago at age 50, I was first diagnosed with breast cancer. I had found a lump in my left breast. When I found out it was cancer, I was very scared. I feared I would probably not live a long life. I did find some comfort in the fact that my 3 children were old enough that they could manage without their mother. My husband was a good parent and available. I didn't mind the loss of the breast that much. I was lucky. The doctor decided I did not need further treatment, only the mastectomy. My lymph nodes were examined, and there was no problem with the nodes. I have never been sick a minute, but in the early years, very frightened of dying from the cancer. 10 years later, I was fairly calmed down from the first incident and living my life. And then I was diagnosed with cancer in the other breast. There were 2 sites in that breast. I had the second mastectomy. At first, I felt like a freak having 2 breasts gone. Many women have 1 breast removed, but 2, I wasn't ready for that. It took me a while to get over that feeling. Again, I was never sick. The surgery was not painful, and I went dancing 2 days after the second mastectomy. After all, there is nothing wrong with my feet. Reconstructive surgery was never mentioned to me. I knew I could have it done, but chose prosthesis instead. It was the right choice for me, and personally, I have never felt pathetic or like less of a woman because of my choice. I am close to 80 now, and I am very well and very active. I have offered with my friend who has a history like mine to go to breast cancer groups and give a program on how we are elderly and we are just fine. In many ways, I can look back and see cancer as a gift. Now I can see much more clearly what is important, and even better, what is not. So that's a message of hope that's coming from a 30-year breast cancer survivor. So again, I'd like to thank you guys for being on the show. And to the audience, remember that regardless of the cards that you were dealt or your current state of health, you have the power to take charge of your health. So never give up and never stop learning. The solution you seek may be just around the corner. I'd ask if you guys could please join me in a toast to the viewers. We wish you a wonderful today and an even better tomorrow. Here's to your health.
Health.